They told us growth was everything, that progress meant movement, that success meant expansion, that the line on the graph must always go up no matter what it cost. The world cheered for every record broken, every building taller than the last, every quarter richer than the one before. We built entire civilizations around the idea that more is always better. And for a while, it worked. Cities blazed with light, markets soared. The hum of machines became the heartbeat of our species. We called it progress, but we never asked, progress toward what? Like children chasing the horizon, we kept running, never realizing the ground beneath us was slowly giving way. The more we produced, the less we felt. The richer we became, the poorer our sense of meaning grew. Somewhere along the way, the story of humanity turned into a race with no finish line. Nature became a resource. People became numbers. Time became money. And anything that didn't grow was labeled a failure. Corporations expanded until they owned the airwaves, the water, the very words we speak. Nations measured their worth not in wisdom, but in output. Even the self became an empire to conquer bigger houses, newer phones, more followers, more fame. But beneath the glitter, cracks began to show. The oceans grew tired, the forests thinned, the air grew heavy. And deep within, a strange emptiness began to spread, a quiet unease that all our achievements hadn't made us whole, only louder. We learned to silence that feeling with noise, with consumption, with the next big thing. But the unease never left. It only waited. The truth is, we forgot that everything in nature has limits. Trees don't grow to the sky. Rivers don't flow forever without return. The earth, like the body, knows balance and punishes those who forget it. Yet humanity, drunk on its own success, declared itself the exception. We thought we could outsmart the law of limits, rewrite nature's code, and bend the world to infinite growth. Now, the signs are everywhere. Economies tremble under their own weight. Mental health collapses in the shadow of endless competition. The planet groans, and we call it climate change. But what we're really witnessing is something older, the same story every empire has told before it fell. A civilization that mistook expansion for evolution. We stand at the height of our power, surrounded by abundance, yet haunted by scarcity. We have everything except the ability to stop. The age of endless growth promised us freedom, but left us enslaved to our own appetites. And deep down, we sense that something sacred has been lost, an ancient balance, a forgotten law waiting to remind us that not all growth is progress, and not every rise is worth the fall. Long before the modern world learned to measure life in profit and progress, there was another way of knowing. The ancients didn't speak of growth the way we do, they spoke of rhythm. They understood that everything, from the Nile to the stars, followed a cycle: birth, rise, decline, renewal. They called it balance, the law of limits, and they built their lives around it. The Egyptians knew that when the Nile flooded too much, the crops would drown, and when it didn't flood enough, the land would starve. So they learned to work with the river, not against it. The Sumerians tracked the skies and watched how the seasons rose and fell like breath. The Stoics saw it in human nature that no emotion, no empire, no desire could last forever without turning into its opposite. To live well was to live in harmony with this truth. Back then, people feared excess more than failure. They understood that too much of anything, even success, could destroy the very order that sustained them. Their myths warned of kings who grew too proud, of cities that reached too high. Every civilization that forgot the rhythm eventually broke under its own weight. But with time, humanity began to believe it could escape the cycle. We learned to store, to hoard, to accumulate. We built machines that outpaced the sun and systems that ignored the seasons. The law of limits faded into myth, buried beneath ambition. Yet that ancient wisdom still hums beneath the surface of every storm, every crash, every burnout. The ancients tried to tell us, when you take without giving, when you rise without pause, the fall is not punishment, it is correction. And the correction always comes. Every empire believes it will be the one to last forever. Rome thought its roads would never crumble, that its coins would always hold value, that its armies would forever keep the world in line. Babylon believed its walls were too high for fate to climb. The British Empire, too, thought the sun would never set on its dominion. But history has a rhythm, and when power grows beyond what the system can hold, collapse becomes the final act. Rome fell not from enemies, but from excess. Too many wars, too much debt, too much comfort. The people forgot discipline, and the rulers mistook luxury for strength. Babylon fell because it believed its own myth that walls and wealth could protect it from decay. The British Empire collapsed when its hunger outgrew the resources that fed it. Each one thought expansion was life. Each one learned that expansion without balance is death. Today, the pattern repeats. Only the names have changed. Instead of emperors, we have corporations. Instead of conquest, we have consumption. Our global markets stretch further than any empire's borders ever did. Yet the same illusion drives it all. The belief that growth can go on forever. We build higher, spend faster, and consume more, pretending not to see the cracks forming beneath our feet. Every empire's downfall begins the same way, with forgetting where enough ends. The signs are always visible, but no one wants to stop the celebration while the music is still playing. History doesn't repeat by accident. It repeats because we never listen. The first fall wasn't the end of those civilizations. It was the lesson they left behind, a lesson we're now dangerously close to failing once again. In the ancient world, people built temples for their gods. Today, we build skyscrapers. We no longer pray to idols carved from stone. We worship the glowing numbers on screens. Our God has changed its name. It is called growth. It promises salvation through profit, purpose through production, and meaning through more. We measure our faith in percentages and quarterly reports. GDP has become scripture, and the markets are modern heaven. Politicians speak its language, companies defend its commandments, and ordinary people sacrifice their time, health, and families to keep it alive. Growth demands constant devotion. It never sleeps, never slows, never says enough. It rewards those who feed it and punishes those who question it. Like any god of desire, growth is seductive. It whispers that more wealth will bring happiness, that expansion will bring freedom. But the more we give, the hungrier it grows. The forests fall, the oceans choke, the workers burn out. The planet itself bends under the weight of endless extraction, yet the high priests of progress tell us to keep believing. They call it success, even as the altar begins to crumble. We have mistaken addiction for advancement. Every product, every click, every dollar fuels a system that needs constant consumption to survive. To stop is to collapse. So we keep feeding it even as it consumes us in return. In the end, the God of growth does not love its worshipers, it only uses them. It takes and takes until there is nothing left to give, and then it moves on to the next civilization willing to kneel. We built this God from our own desires, and now we bow to it, praying for more while quietly fearing the day it finally answers. At first, the warnings came as whispers, a strange season here, a dying river there. But humanity was too busy counting profits to listen. We called it progress when forests turned into cities, when oceans filled with ships, when the sky dimmed beneath our smoke. Yet nature was watching. And when balance was finally broken, it began to speak not in words, but in consequences. The floods came first, then the fires, then the storms that no one could predict. Crops failed where they once flourished. Species vanished without goodbye. The air thickened, the ice melted, and the world's pulse began to stutter. What we called climate change was never nature's anger, it was her correction. She wasn't punishing us, she was reminding us that no system can live forever on taking. The earth has its own kind of intelligence, older than any economy. It knows how to heal itself, even if that means healing without us. And as the planet strained under our weight, something inside humanity cracked too. Anxiety rose like a second atmosphere. People burned out, minds exhausted by the constant chase for more. The forests outside and the forests within were dying in the same way from never being allowed to rest. The forgotten law was returning, not through philosophy, but through pain. Every imbalance in the outer world reflected the imbalance within us, the greed, the speed, the endless wanting. Nature didn't turn against us. She simply stopped protecting us from ourselves. When nature speaks back, it doesn't need to shout. The storms are her sentences, the silence her warning. And if we keep refusing to listen, her next language will be extinction, not as revenge, but as the final correction of a world that forgot how to stop. The collapse we see outside is only a reflection of what's happening inside. Humanity's crisis didn't begin in the markets or the climate, it began in the mind. Somewhere along the way, we lost the ability to sit with emptiness. We filled silence with noise, rest with work, and meaning with material things. The hunger for wealth, power, and status was never truly about the world, it was about escaping ourselves. Every empire we build is an echo of that inner void. We chase control because we fear chaos. We chase more because we're terrified of being enough. The skyscrapers, the wars, the endless consumption, they're all mirrors of the same wound, a species that forgot how to feel whole without proving it. The forgotten law was never just about nature's balance, it was about the mind's. When a person can't stop consuming, we call it addiction. When a civilization can't stop, we call it progress. Both end the same way in collapse. The more we try to fill the emptiness with things, the deeper it grows. The ancient Stoics understood this. They warned that freedom comes not from having more, but from needing less. Yet we built a world that rewards the opposite. The truth is, we're not suffering from a shortage of resources. We're suffering from a shortage of meaning. The forests are burning because our inner world is on fire. The oceans are rising because our desires have no shore. The balance we lost in the outer world can only return when we remember it within ourselves. The forgotten law isn't written in stone or scripture, it's the quiet voice that whispers, "You already have enough. You always did." From the ashes of exhaustion, something begins to awaken. The noise quiets. The endless chase starts to lose its grip. People begin to see what the ancients once knew, that balance is not weakness, and that enough is not failure. In the ruins of our excess, the forgotten law returns, not as a threat, but as a teacher. The world begins to remember. Farmers turn the soil with care instead of force. Cities learn to breathe again through green spaces and silence. Even business, once obsessed with endless growth, starts to speak the language of sustainability. The lesson is simple but sacred. When you take, you must also give. When you build, you must also restore. When you rise, you must remain rooted. The ancients called this harmony the alignment between creation and consumption, between human desire and nature's rhythm. They knew that life wasn't a race to the top, but a circle to stay within. We forgot this truth, and it nearly destroyed us. But now, piece by piece, the memory is returning. In those who plant trees they'll never see grow, in movements that trade greed for gratitude, in minds that measure success, not in numbers, but in peace. The return of the ancient law isn't a revolution, it's a remembering. It's the quiet realization that progress without wisdom isn't progress at all. The balance we thought was lost was waiting for us all along, beneath the noise, beneath the hunger, beneath the fear. And as humanity begins to listen again, the world starts to heal, not through power, but through restraint. The forgotten law was never gone. It was simply waiting for us to become still enough to hear it. We've come full circle. The same choice that faced the empires of the past now stands before us, only this time, it's the whole world that waits for our answer. The towers are taller, the networks faster, the wealth greater, yet the question remains the same. Will we remember the law that sustains life or chase the illusion that ends it? Humanity stands at a threshold between two futures. One built on restraint, wisdom, and balance, the other built on denial, noise, and endless hunger. The earth has spoken. History has warned, and even our own hearts whisper that the way we live cannot last. Still, the pull of comfort is strong. The illusion of more is sweet. And the temptation to look away is ancient. But somewhere in the quiet, a new awareness stirs. People are beginning to see that survival isn't about domination, it's about harmony. The forgotten law isn't an old superstition. It's the heartbeat of everything that endures. Empires rise and fall, technologies evolve and vanish, but truth remains, waiting beneath the ruins for anyone humble enough to hear it. The story of the modern world will not end with a bang or a fire. It will end or begin again with a choice to slow down, to restore balance, to remember that the earth and the human spirit share the same limits, the same needs, the same breath. Maybe this time we'll listen. Maybe this time we'll learn that strength is not in endless growth, but in knowing when to stop. The forgotten law has never left us. It's only been waiting patient, eternal, and unbroken for us to remember what it truly means to live.